We'll do it as usual, which is we start with the guest, because listen, most people believe in that whole system, Yumi, of like, oh, you're going to start slow, and like, oh, bloody hell, I'm nervous. Like, I believe like fucking mother bird. You just kick them out the nest. And listen, either it hits the ground and you go, oh, well, fuck it, try the next one, or it flies, one of the two. So let's see if you indeed do fly, or just hurtle to the ground, dying in the process, never to be seen again. Right, so and we start with the good on this one. We'll go in the order of the names, okay? So for the good, reveal to us, please. What did you pick as the good? What is your theme for the good?
So my good is Gambit as just a case study, because I think they're a team that have a really good work ethic and are also a team that really massively anti-strat, where I don't think coming into the circuit, people would have realized as much homework as going into the games as it may appear, because they kind of, they're the classic old style CIS where it's so slow and so default heavy, and then they just burst out and get kills and win the game, or win a round. And on paper, that looks really basic and it looks really simple, but I think they're actually elevating a lot of other teams, especially during this time where, some of the roster moves are coming in, and some like stability issues I think are happening among rosters, that they're having to think how they're having to meta game themselves effectively to then counteract Gambit, because I think I really kind of just stumbled upon the point really when I was watching there was an Evil Geniuses game with Gambit very recently on Inferno, and I actually think EG were doing so many things right and made Gambit so uncomfortable that we actually saw Gambit like rushing bomb sites, which is so infrequent for them to do something stylistically like that. But it showed as much that EG had done their homework about like what the tendencies are for Gambit, and so I think it's good because EG and other teams within the circuit during the stability or some mild instability issues for some of them are actually going to get better faster, especially in time for the major, because Gambit are kind of just putting the fire up their ass.
Okay, right. What do you think of that, Mauisnake? By the way, I didn't expect that last angle, which is actually a pretty interesting one, which is he's not just praising Gambit, he's basically implying like Gambit's like fucking like Master Splinter training up all the fucking turtles or something, like he's making everyone better for the minute. Okay, that's nice of him. Nice, certainly nice to do. Go on, what do you think?
I think that it's hard not to be a fan of at least the way Gambit's been playing CS lately. There's just so much individual force on the roster. You have Axile, like Hobbit and Axile are battling for the best rifler every tournament. Shiro is just like, he's an upgraded Jame at this point. Yes. And when you have Inters and Nafany, you think that, okay, surely there's some weak link on this team. Surely there's a Sanji somewhere, but no, like everybody is super competent in their ability. So you can't even really like target anybody. Whereas you look at other teams and there's a bomb site that's weaker and teams will target that person on that bomb site. But Gambit just have such good procedures. They have such good crossfires, and they play such a variety of styles game to game, where I was noting when I was first watching Gambit Rise that they were they were really passive on CT side. I felt like they were not really fighting for any information, and then they would just have super sick setups that would work more times than they didn't. And then lately, I've been seeing them play for a lot more info. It's like they've gained confidence individually, so they can start going for more proactive, aggressive plays, so that things become easier for them in the mid-late round. And it's just like, everything they do feels like there's a contingency plan. Like that's the best part about them, where even when they lose that opening pick, because it's Nafany, if I'm not mistaken, he's the guy that's just frequently just running out. Like he was throwing his life away at IEM Summer a lot, like 20% entry success rate, but he was taking 30% of their duels for like the first few BO3s, and then they were still winning. So like even when they have that information from Nafany, like he's able to call the right idea despite the fact that they're in a man deficit situation. Like it's really sick to see all the procedures because everything's just really well outlined. It's kind of Astralis-esque. Like I think they're a little bit they're a little bit, there's a little more flair to their play than Astralis, but in terms of individuals. But I think that they are super deserving of their #1 position.
Yeah, for me, the key thing with Gambit is I remember when all the CIS teams were coming up, right? And everyone obviously was raving about this 3 core of like, you still had Virtus Pro, you had Spirit was the weird outsider, and then Gambit was the one where, they made good on all the shit with the Gambit youngsters, etc. If you looked at the 3, the most obvious one that would have the chance to translate and be good if we'd have gone back to LAN was in theory Gambit, because actually they looked like they had a whole system and every player fit his role within that. Whereas like, for example, Virtus Pro definitely has a system, but it's more more like a little bit more gimmicky, you know. It's like certain types of teams you'll smash super hard, certain teams match up very well. Spirit, I'll just say it straight up, like, oh, that's just fragging, you know. Like I look at that and I'm not that impressed. Like, you know, if you can do that online, yeah, you can win some games, but that's the point. A lot of that isn't probably going to translate. The thing about Gambit is it doesn't even matter to me that much if a couple of them have a few jitters when we go to LAN, or they have jitters from the pressure of being number one and they're at the major or something. Like, a system will carry you through the hard times. This is what fans never understood, is if you ever rely, I mean, FaZe Clan showed us this for many, many years. If you ever rely on the idea of like, well, I've got 3 or 4 really good aimers, so, you know, surely 3 of them turn up. It's like, mate, Na'Vi's been playing that game for fucking years at this point in time. It doesn't, that's actually one of the least reliable things in Counter-Strike. It's also, if you notice, a lot of team games are like that. Same in the NBA. People think, well, you could just shoot the ball in the net. It's like, it isn't just about shooting though, is it? It's about like, you know, what your defensive schemes are, like what is your offensive strategy, how do you move the ball. It's not about like just, hey, 3 people take 20 shots each and then if you make enough we win. Like that's unfortunately where you know that despite them always saying on Reddit the opposite, that they all know the game super in depth, they're all just thinking like matchmaking players. They're all just thinking, well, if I get 15 kills here and he gets 15 kills there, then it's like, that isn't pro Counter-Strike. And so I have massive respect for the style of play that Gambit's playing, because also to be that young and inexperienced as players but have that much poise is ridiculous. And I think it's one of the reason I'll even tag on your thing of it's Astralis-esque Mauisnake is I think it makes every single one of the big names in the team, because they have the best trio at the moment in terms of firepower. Those 3, other teams have like 2 players that can go, you know, head to head. These have 3 all the time. Those 3 all get to look better from playing with each other. This is another factor. If you're in one of these teams, do not make roster moves. You better literally wait till you've run the tank dry before you make a roster move, because you never know. Like let's imagine a world where Axal went to some other, maybe he goes to Na'Vi in a year from now. But I guarantee Shiro's not getting all those passive op kills in the same way, mate. The game's just not going to be the same for him. He's going to have to force it half the time. What if Hobbit eventually just retires? Remember, he's got a family, he's having all the success, maybe he wins the next major or something. Now life gets harder for Axal, you know what I mean? Like, that's why the beauty of Counter-Strike always for me was, it's like how the team concept interacts with the individual players. Realistically, it's like I said on that last episode, I sort of like in a fucked up way that Na'Vi's so unreliable, because it means Simple has to just go God mode. But it shouldn't be that way, let's be real. He should just be able to do what a normal player does, like a Rops or something, just have their performance and win the tournament and be the MVP. That is real Counter-Strike. And Gambit plays real Counter-Strike, so props, yeah, good, pretty good one for the good.
Yeah. Just to tag on a final point is that I actually think Hobbit and Axal, while they're competing for best rifle, I think they're also like the most integral players of the team, just in terms of getting information, because they're typically extremities players, and some of the biggest strengths of Gambit is the fantastic mid-rounding, and it almost feels like Nafany will sort of give full trust in the extremity player to say like, okay, I have this read on this guy, he would usually do X, Y, and Z if this smoke is down or this flash is there, and kind of call around that. You can see, like, even just looking at some of the stats for Axal, he doesn't, it's not that he has bad games on like Mirage is one that I've looked at quite a lot, but when they go B more often, he gets more kills, and when he has lower kill games, they're typically hitting the A-bomb site more, and that's usually just that push and pull about what information they're getting.
Speaking of which, so seamless segue, Mauisnake did just publish a video, I think it was yesterday, wasn't it? Which is like, or was it today? It was like the 1-2 punch of Hobbit and Axal, and he basically watches a demo in old school Mauisnake style. I will say, the one thing Mauisnake could probably tune up on those is like, he could prep the fucking segments. He does always just do, he was Launders before Launders. He was like, right, well, I've got the knowledge, but I'm just lazy as fuck, so let's have a watch of a demo.
I've been watching.
You did
him
practice. Okay.
Yeah. No, okay. The last few I've done, I actually after the first like year of doing it, I've actually always watched the demo before I do
that's
it,
good.
or at least watch the game and I take.
That was the only
notes.
Scuffed part I always used to think back in the day, because sometimes you would also watch a game and be like, this wasn't actually that good a demo. I'm like, how are you going to tell me that after I was watching for 40 minutes with you? I thought this was some straight fire demo. What?
No. I'm always watching it. And also, the reason the Hobbit Axal one I was able to do because I watched it beforehand and I took notes on who are we going to watch on each round, or is it Axal or Hobbit? So I would switch between them on who's the better person. But like my thing about Gambit is that I think that like the only thing, like if I have to put like one asterisk by it, is just that when you're traveling to lands, can you prepare this much? Like when we were like, if we have to, circle the globe, it's very hard for these teams to come into tournaments prepping for every single one, because sometimes you have breaks, and sometimes you can, study other teams, study the matchups that are in the upcoming tournament. But sometimes you're literally leaving. I forgot, what was it? EG. They won ESL One New York, and they had to fly 8 hours later or something like that to a European tournament. If you have to do, you can't. Yeah, you can't.
And then they went out immediately, if you remember. I think last place or something mental as a result.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't. It's harder to carry form from one tournament to the other if they're back to back like that. And when I think Hobbit said on a post game interview that 60% of their game on Ancient was going to be anti-stratting for one of their matches, and it was just okay, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that you
guys
can trust that much, because you have to have some fundamentals for yourself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the good news about that though is listen, if you're someone who online, because let's be real, online it almost is boring how good they are. It's basically you have to hope Prime Na'Vi run head to head with them, or they have the matchup with Heroic, which is the one they don't get, sadly. So in the moment they just win everything. I will say this, that's also where you'll really see them tested though, because the good news about that is, as you're saying, you won't be able game to game to come in with stuff. Because I agree with Yumi, the style they play is almost like you basically have to prep for them and then think what you're going to do in response to what they're doing. Meanwhile, they're already ahead of the game on this. If they have to keep 85% of what they did the last map they just played in the demo that everyone's watching overnight, it's harder to execute. That's why I always said Astralis were clearly the GOATs. It ain't about the championships they won. It's about the fact that in a normal cycle